Yeah, hi. Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, yeah, the question really is at the beginning of this recruitment and selection series of webinars, the question really is what jobs are we going to hire to? What jobs are we going to recruit to? And many managers will actually inherit what they get. They'll inherit the jobs, they'll inherit a department, they'll inherit a company, and the jobs are there, they're set. So very many managers will actually pick up that situation and they know what they want. If someone leaves, they hire another one. If they've got a bit more capacity that's needed, they'll hire more of that same. But the question really that we want to pose here is how do you know what jobs you really should be recruiting to? And what happens if you want to split jobs? If you want to recombine jobs in different ways? If you want to perhaps reduce the emphasis on one element of a job and increase in another? How do you do this? How, in a rational sense, do you determine the jobs you actually need in a company? So imagine now that you don't have a company, you don't have that department, you are starting from scratch, and we're therefore trying to look at that department, look at that company, and say, how does it look? What jobs are there? And therefore, what can we go out to recruit for? It applies, therefore, if we started from scratch, but it also applies if we inherit. And that's the key thing to look at, because many will inherit. So we're going to go through what makes a job. What is a job? What makes a job? How do we construct a job? And we'll look at the all-important document in recruitment, the job description, and next week we'll look at the person spec, the thing that converts the job description into something that we're actually going to go out and look for. So without more ado, let's get on and have a look at the next bit, which is what is a job? How does it? What makes a job? The job itself, the link between the job and perhaps where the job fits in the organization is, of course, what we want from the job outcomes, the job performance, the person's performance. That's what we actually want. We're hiring, if you like, a person, but we don't want a person, we want the outcomes. There, of course, there's a link directly from the person to the outcomes, and here we have it on screen. We're seeing here that the person's outcome is a function of the person's performance. What does the person's performance depend on? Well, the skills and knowledge being competency, competencies, and then their experience, which gives them the confidence to do the job. And then, of course, the all-important technology that they use. So every job is we make the assumption with every job that there is a technology. It could simply be a PC and a spreadsheet. It could be some customized program. If you're an insurance broker, if you're an insurance agent, then perhaps it's a whole lot of lookup tables. It's some direct line access into the insurance provider to give you the quotes, etc. There is always a technology, and of course, if you're somebody who actually builds things, inevitably there are more perhaps practical tools that we would use for technology. So every job has its technology. Working back, of course, the thing that gives the performance is the motivation, and then the thing, and you'll hear us say this many times, the thing that actually gives us the motivation is the job that the person does. So when it comes to constructing jobs in a company, in a department, fundamentally, we're looking at the job to give us the motivation. So we're trying to design the job in such a way that it will motivate. And there are 5 attributes to a job that will help the job motivate. The task variety. Nobody likes doing just one thing. The task variety. The task identity, how well I identify with it. If I am a carpenter and the job is a carpenter's job, I identify directly with it. It means something to me. It's what I trained to do, and therefore I will be motivated to further my career. Job significance, task significance, the significance of the work I do. If it's a mundane, menial job, it has much less significance, and therefore I'm likely to be less motivated. task autonomy or job autonomy, the degree to which I'm allowed to get on, set objectives by all means with my manager, but on the other hand, I'm able to get on. I'm not being told minute by minute exactly what to do. And the flip side is, if I am told minute by minute, then I'm likely to be less motivated. And of course, the degree to which I gain feedback from the work that I do, immediate feedback, not 3 weeks later when the boss says, yeah, that was a good job or that wasn't a good job, but immediate feedback. Am I getting something that tells me now what I'm doing and how well I'm doing it? So there's a link there. So we're looking at these jobs, and we have to always test any job we have for those 5, and that's the essence of job design, to test after we've looked at the functions. And now we're going to look at the function of the job. What is it the job is actually going to do, and how do we design a job? How do we tell what jobs we need? Now, you'll see us use this form of modeling many, many times. We are engaging ourselves here in systems modeling. This is specifically a concept model. On the screen, the words are concepts. So you have things like invoicing. And the way we're designing this is that, for example, if I look at, let's say, I look at promotional marketing, let's start there. Promotional marketing leads to sales. Sales leads to order intake. Order intake leads to production, production leads to delivery. And along the way, we had got product management leading to promotional marketing, product management leading to product design to promotional production methods, etc. So we got all these, we've modeled the company, and it is complete. Now, that's important. We've got to actually get this complete. And it's quite complex. We're looking here at a very, very simplified model of a company. But in fact, when we do this properly, it's quite complex. And I'll show you a couple of real ones in a moment, but it's quite complex. So this is the way in which we can see these concepts are stuff that has to happen. So for example, invoicing. Somebody has to generate an invoice. There is therefore somebody's job, or some piece of technology job, technology function, somebody has to generate this invoice. And that's some part of someone's job, albeit married with performance, married with technology. So slowly as we specialize, we drill down and down and down. If we look at the sole trader when they first start, the entrepreneur when we first start, a sole trader or an entrepreneur will do every one of those. Every single one of those. They'll do their own promotional marketing. They'll do sales. They'll take an order. They'll produce something that they then can produce. They'll deliver it. They'll implement it. They'll invoice, and they'll create turnover, profit, blah, blah, blah. So the sole trader does it all. All we're doing here is to actually look at each of those. Now, each of those gives us a role. There is a role of sales. It's not a job necessarily, and it could become a job. We might decide to make it a job. But at this moment, it's just, I call it a concept. It's a role. The role is there. Order intake, it is somebody's role to do that, to take the order. And so we can then group those concepts, group those roles to form jobs. And I've done it here with the dashed lozenges. That in essence what you've got is it is somebody's job to look after promotional marketing, sales, and order intake. And you can start to see that we can now build jobs. We can build jobs any way we like. We can group these things. It would be a little bit weird if we actually grouped product design and promotional marketing together. We might find that quite difficult, because when it comes to look for somebody who has promotional marketing and product design experience and competency, we might find that a little difficult. But there is a logic to grouping them together, and that's part of the skill of the modeling, to group the roles together to give sensible jobs. Now, we can do this. We don't have to do this. This is not something that I said earlier. We're not looking at this necessarily being from the bottom up, starting with a white piece of paper. We can do this on any department, any company. We can look at the sense behind all of the roles and look at the sense of the way the jobs are built. Now, as we specialize, we can therefore split. Let's take the job of promotional marketing, sales, and order intake. We can split those. As the company grows, we can say there is need for a specialist in promotional marketing. We can look for a specialist in sales and a specialist in order intake. We can then even look, for example, at maximizing our technology in order intake and computerizing it. And we can start, therefore, to look at the whole company. So that job would become, instead of being promotional marketing, sales, and order intake, a computer would take over the order intake, perhaps being an online order taking activity, while sales was separated and promotional marketing separated. So there we go. We can actually generate the jobs or the roles, group them into jobs, and we can play any tune we like on this model. We can reconstruct it any way we like. In the end, it gives us the ability for every job to give us for us to write out a job purpose and a scope statement. Now, the great thing, and one of the reasons why we're particularly keen on doing this as part of recruitment and selection, is yes, we need to tell the recruitment agent or whatever what it is we're looking for, but also that scope statement gives us a link to pay. The bigger the job, the bigger the pay. So we're starting to also build the size of the job and link the size of the job into other systems within the company, such as the pay system. So it's important, therefore, that we know what the job does, how it fits, what its purpose is, and of course it will have a purpose. You may think this is strange to talk about purpose, but we've come across any number of jobs which have no purpose. Somebody believes that they're needed, but when it actually comes to it, the job itself really could be done without. And that also is one of the benefits of this, that you can start to identify jobs that actually can be done without. So there we are. We can build the job purpose and scope, and that's us at the head, right at the head of the job description itself. Now, I said I'd show you some of the detailed modeling. Here's a couple of real modeling scenarios, or real models from the one on the left is a concept model, and you start to see this is real time. It's a little bit scrappy as a result because we're actually doing it on screen with the client, or on the projector screen with the client. And you'll see here that we've put lozenges around product management and evangelism. We're starting to group those two together. Product management and evangelism are grouped together. And you'll see, just sneaking in on the side, mergers and acquisition and joint ventures. So you've got mergers and acquisitions, joint venture, product management and evangelism. That's starting to become one job. It might change, but that's one thing. And you can start also to see promotional marketing pitches, that is to say, making pitches for business to clients, promotional marketing pitches and prospecting. That looks like that's probably a job, but it also, in another life, in another incarnation, we're looking at it possibly with the square boxes or rectangular boxes behind, and actually joining that in with the offer and consulting. So there's a little bit of thinking online in real time while we're doing this with the client as to what we're actually going to construct. So this is us in real terms getting down to constructing jobs on screen. On the right there, we're seeing a slightly different approach. What we've done here is taken a systems approach to the organization, in the sense of identifying specific systems and saying there is a customer support system, there is a maintenance system, there is a people management system. And the reason for that is that within each of those, we can then, this is moving towards a slightly larger company perhaps, where we're actually seeing that the customer onboarding system perhaps might have its very own model. But the important thing is we're starting to identify jobs. We've got roles, we're identifying the roles, mashing them together into jobs. And therefore, what we're starting to see is the size of jobs, also incidentally the interaction between jobs, but that's a different story and that's for another day. So this is really illustrating the use of modeling before we start going out to a recruitment agent, before we say anything about what it is we want. We're doing our homework. As a manager, we're doing our homework, and we're saying, how can I perceive what it is I'm trying to achieve? Never mind about calling it a bought ledger accountant. Forget that. Let's start at the beginning and model the company. Now, another type of modeling that we particularly like is what's called IDEF modeling. I forget what IDEF stands for, but it's in essence a process modeling, and it takes each of those systems in the previous model, and it says, given an input of management instruction and available market, then identify the addressable market, design the campaign, implement the campaign, measure the campaign success, and activate the customer. And there's a sort of flow there. Now, as soon as you get this, this is in effect are starting to now look for accountabilities and responsibilities out of the job. And we can start to now say, we can get it into this format that I mentioned last week, and we'll mention again and again, where we look at job descriptions and say, do something to achieve a result. And in effect, what you're saying is do something. Well, I want to identify addressable market, design a campaign, implement the campaign, measure the campaign success, and activate the customer. Do something? Well, in response to the management instruction and given the available market, then do all of that in order to achieve an activated customer. And instantly, as soon as we've got this type of modeling, we've got this accountability statement, which gives us the job description. And so at that point, then we've come all the way from modeling through to the job description. Here's a typical job description. I don't want to say much about it. I don't want to go through it. The critical thing about it is not a list of roles. It is not a list of tasks. The primary thing is the accountabilities and responsibilities, because it's them that's going to give us the competencies and behaviors that we need in order to recruit. Those are the things that we're trying to actually get at. So the key thing here is not to list job role, list job tasks. That's not a job description. That's just a list of tasks. That's really telling us very little. We can't actually tell a candidate what they really will be responsible for unless we've got those accountabilities and responsibilities. And the rest give us job size and the ability to put pay on it and the likes. Where we're headed, of course, is to identify the competencies and behaviors so that we can select for them, so that first we can search for them and then we can actually select for them. So that's all good so far. We can now look at what it is. How do we bring those jobs together? And the answer is into a Manpower Plan. And the Manpower Plan is the thing that links the business plan of the company that says we will strive next year. We believe that we can achieve £2.5 million turnover, and we will do it with this staff complement. And we can see the underlined, black underlined titles. They're the job titles. Under each of those, you can see, and the one I used as an example previously, it's the same, it's just the Manpower Plan developed from that model. You can see here that the sales and marketing executive, so-called, is responsible for promotional marketing, sales, and order intake. There we are. Now, in order to achieve, and this is another bit of modeling, in order to achieve the P&L that suggests a turnover of £2.5 million, we need 3 full-time equivalent heads of that. And we can go around and do the same exercise in we're calling a production operative, responsible for production, delivery, and implementation. And we need 6.5 full-time equivalents of them. And if I remember rightly, it works out at something like, well, we can, I'll have to do it. I haven't actually done it, so we'll have to do it. It's 6, 12.5, 13, 14, 15 full-time equivalents. And that might compute to something like I don't know, let's say 10 part-timers and 10 full-timers, say, in the company. And that gives us then the manpower plan. So now we know how many sales and marketing executives we need to run the company. We therefore know what we're going out to hire. We know it's a sales and marketing executive. We know it's going to be responsible for promotional marketing, sales, and order intake. And we know we need 3 of them. So suddenly we are really pulling together that requirement to recruit. And that, in the end, is what it's about. A word finally then about this fella, flexibility versus specifics. We've been very specific. As I've gone through there, it's very, very specific. This is what we need. Everything's cut and dried. One of the problems, of course, is that managers specifically want people to be flexible. And in essence, you could argue, well, let's just throw away the job description. In that case, everybody will just have to muddle along and do what's needed. No, the simple thing is build a job description. By all means, use one of the accountabilities statements to comment on flexibility. So actually drive flexibility. Maybe use the scope statement to say that you're expected to be flexible. But of course, in the end, the person you hire, you're looking for somebody who can be flexible. And that perhaps comes from their personality and from their competencies. And in the end, flexibility, of course, is a function anyway of culture. So yes, we can still cope with flexibility inside this methodology. So there we are. What we're asking is, what jobs do we recruit for? And of course, let's be specific. How are we going to define those jobs? Therefore, next week, how do we actually go about defining the person? How do we characterize the person that will excel in these jobs? And the answer, of course, is that we need this foundation. We need to set the foundation. We need to have designed the right jobs, either with a white piece of paper starting from scratch, or accepting that we've got what we've got and actually looking at whether or not that is good for the future. So there we are, setting foundations, designing the right jobs, and next week we move from jobs into characterizing the person. So back to you, Sue.